Where Donald Trump goes, legal issues seem to follow. However, he's going to have one less legal problem to worry about now. The article I'm covering today is from the AP. What of individual one? Fed's Trump campaign case is dead. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Joe the Lawyer. I'm your host, Joe Pometto, a practicing Pittsburgh criminal defense attorney. On this channel, I break down legal news, legal analysis, and news in general from a law perspective. I was about to say perspective. I don't know what that means. If you like my content, like, subscribe, comment, and share. Trying to get to 1,000 subscriptions so I can monetize. So please subscribe and share this video. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. If this is your first time here, you may not know about my little ritual. If you have been here before, you know I like to do the same time sip. So raise your cup, your glass in the air, have a sip with me of whatever it is you're drinking, because when we sip together, it tastes better. Cheers. Okay, let's take a look at this article. This is out of the New York Associated Press. The federal probe of hush money paid to cover up former President Donald Trump's alleged extramarital affairs hasn't been restarted, even though he no longer has the legal shield of the presidency, the Associated Press has learned. Trump's exit from the White House last month prompted speculation that U.S. prosecutors may revive the investigation that sent his former attorney, Michael Cohen, to prison. Trump himself has been publicly implicated by prosecutors as complicit in Cohen's campaign finance crimes during his 2016 run for office. And you know, I saw an article months ago, years ago, on the prison that Michael Cohen was sent to. It's like some minimal security prison, either in New York or Pennsylvania, and they play tennis there. They got TVs in their rooms. It's like very much a minimum security prison. Google it and you know, get a quick laugh. So several people involved in the case say the U.S. Attorney's Office in Manhattan has made no such move and is unlikely to do so going forward. An attorney for one key witness described the investigation as dead, adding prosecutors have even returned certain evidence they collected, a likely indication no one else will be charged. The attorney spoke on the condition of anonymity because prosecutors have not discussed the case publicly. So generally, a prosecution is going to be able to keep evidence that is connected with a crime until the trial. And then after the trial, they may give some of it back unless it's guns or illegal contraband. But they can only keep it as long as there's a case. When the case is gone, they have to give the evidence back, maybe laptops, file cabinets, who knows in this case, probably something along those lines. They have to return it now. If the case is done, if they're returning that stuff, they're almost certainly done with the case. One current and one former law enforcement official told the AP that factors beyond presidential immunity prevented Trump from being charged for his role in buying the silence of Karen McDougal and porn actress Stormy Daniels, who said they'd had extramarital affairs with him. Trump's departure from office has not altered that equation, said the officials, who were not authorized to discuss internal deliberations and spoke on the condition of anonymity. Cohen, who has cast himself as a potential star witness against his former boss, told the AP he has not heard from the U.S. Attorney's Office in Manhattan since late 2018, when he was sentenced to 3 years in prison for arranging the payments. The U.S. Attorney's Office declined to comment. A message seeking comment was sent to Trump's attorney. His legal team is preparing for the start of the second impeachment trial. Trump has said the payments to Daniels and McDougal were a private matter and did not amount to campaign finance violations. Federal prosecutors infamously referred to Trump as Individual One in charging Cohen with skirting campaign contribution rules by arranging six-figure payments to Daniels and McDougal, a former Playboy model, to keep them quiet about years-old affairs that Trump consistently denied. The investigation turned up evidence that Trump himself had been aware of the payments, despite his initial public claims he knew nothing about them. including a recording in which he can be heard speaking to Cohen about efforts to buy McDougal's continued silence. Prosecutors said individual one directed Cohen to make the payments, which they said should have been subject to campaign finance laws because they were made for the purpose of helping Trump to win the election. Trump's lawyers maintained during his presidency that he was shielded from prosecution while in office, raising questions about his legal exposure following his tenure and even the prospect he would preemptively pardon himself. But prosecutors harbored other concerns, particularly over the reliability of Cohen as a witness. The former enforcement official said, adding it was not likely for new witnesses to emerge. As part of the same case, Cohen was also charged with lying to Congress about a Trump project in Russia. At the time, Manhattan prosecutors said in court filings that Cohen had been forthright and credible, but added that he repeatedly declined to provide full information about the scope of any additional criminal conduct in which he may have engaged or had knowledge. Prosecutors also believed it was far from clear that Trump could be convicted of a campaign finance crime, even if a jury believed Cohen's allegations that he directed the hush money payments. But let me stop you right there. I'm going to get back to the article. If they could have convicted Cohen, tell me why they couldn't also have convicted Trump. So either they have both cases or both cases are nonsense. Campaign finance prosecutions are fraught with challenges, as evidenced by a similar case over hush money payments to a woman that the government brought and ultimately dropped against former U.S. Senator John Edwards, a Democrat. Daniel's attorney, Clark Brewster, declined to say when she spoke last with federal prosecutors in Manhattan, but said this week he wasn't aware of any new movement in the case. Trump still faces a minefield of other potential legal issues on top of his impeachment trial, including investigations of his business practices by the Manhattan District Attorney in New York. The Manhattan prosecutors' probe includes a look at the 2016 hush money payoffs. Cohen has said that Trump greenlighted a $130,000 payment to Daniels ahead of the election and later reimbursed him for the payment with fake legal fees. The AP reported last month that the Manhattan District Attorney's Office recently interviewed Cohen for hours, quizzing him about Trump's business dealings. Trump has since gotten himself embroiled in more dramatic and potentially more easily provable forms of criminality, said Ellie Honig, a legal analyst and former federal prosecutor in Manhattan. I don't really know what she's talking about there, and I can't really agree with that. Federal prosecutors in New York first revealed they had closed their investigation into Cohen's hush money payments in July 2019 amid a push by news organizations, including AP, to unseal search warrants relating to the FBI raid of Cohen's office and hotel room. That didn't preclude them from reopening it, however, and speculation lived on that it could be revived. Instead, prosecutors have moved on. Several assigned to the case have left the U.S. Attorney's Office, departures that may have been delayed if they were eyeing a criminal case against a former president. So there's a lot to unravel here. Let's start with this. They say Michael Cohen is an unreliable witness. Okay, but and correct me if I'm wrong because I'm not 100% sure, but my understanding is Michael Cohen was charged with these actions. Okay, he was charged with doing something criminal in relation to these payments, and he ended up pleading guilty. And he likely pled guilty because he thought he would lose at trial. So he is convicted. He was convicted of something similar here. And now the prosecutors are saying, oh, well, he's an unreliable witness. Well, what evidence did they have against him to start out? Okay. And if one of the cases is good, like the one against Cohen, why isn't the other one good? Or the alternative, both cases are BS, okay? And Michael Cohen took a deal because he was scared, and he actually had the charges brought against him, and he was terrified, and he knew if he took the deal, he'd get to go to that minimum security prison, which is ultimately what happened, and do a bunch of probation, I think, something along those lines. So I don't know how much I buy that excuse, okay? It may just be that nobody really wants to go after a former president. Okay, that's another thing. Nobody wants to go after a former president. Number one, and this, in my opinion, it would be extremely divisive. It would not be a good thing for the country for a former president to be prosecuted criminally, especially over something like this, which comes to the next point, that it's not even clear whether or not what happened was criminal, right? He used money to pay off some people who were going to say bad things about him, and because of that, it would have hurt his campaign, and that violates campaign contributions. Well, I don't know about that. It would have hurt his reputation as well, right? If you're being defamed or people are saying things about you, just because in the context of a campaign you pay someone off, that shouldn't just be illegal because it was done in the context of a campaign, right? Because the reality is all the time I do discrimination and harassment lawsuits. Okay, I've brought many race discrimination, sexual misconduct types of lawsuits, and generally when those lawsuits are settled, both sides sign non-disclosures. Both sides sign non-disclosures. Okay, you could, if they're going to define what happened here as hush money, okay, then almost every settlement in this country that's done by employment attorneys and defamation attorneys every single day between, two conflicting parties could be conceived as hush money. And if the person just happens to be a candidate for office, well, that violates campaign contributions. It makes no sense at all. It makes no sense at all. So, I don't know all the details here, and I'm not a federal practitioner, but I think the charges were a little bit of BS, okay? And for these charges to go forward against the former president, it would just divide the country further, right? This is the reason that, Gerald Ford pardoned Nixon, and, most of the country agreed, maybe not at first, but after a while, that that was the right thing to do so that the country could move forward. Donald Trump's 74, 75 years old. I'm not saying he's going anywhere, okay? He's a rabble-rouser. But I don't think, a weak and flimsy prosecution like this should be pursued at this point. And I don't even really think there's a case here. As a defense attorney, I'm a criminal defense attorney. I'm not sure there's a case here. The thing too about being immune from prosecution while you're in the presidency, that also causes a lot of problems. To hang lawsuits in criminal, like if you have to do a criminal investigation, okay, but to hang a criminal investigation over a president's head while they're in office, I don't think that's healthy for anybody. It raises the stakes of everything. And you could probably go back and look at a lot of what actions that presidents took and say, well, this may or may not have been criminal, okay? Really, look hard. Look at all the presidents we've had. They have to make massive, crazy, wild decisions. So it's just not a good thing for the country. Look, if this was a homicide investigation or a burglary investigation or a much more serious type of crime where the lines were more black and white, I would have a different story. But here, there just doesn't really seem to be much of a case. So, interesting article. Maybe the media can finally bury this. I hope you found my analysis illuminating, even if you didn't necessarily like the conclusion. Think about the arguments that I made. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Joe Pometto, Joe the Lawyer. If you like my content, please like, subscribe, comment, and share. Really get me subscriptions, trying to get to 1,000 here. I am a legal mind, bringing my legal mind onto the legal news of the day so that I can add some context to what the reporters and the journalists write. They're not lawyers, but I am. Thank you for joining me. Peace out.